Hey, Cedar Ridge friends and family, thank you for just spending a few minutes out of your day here partway through the week. This past Sunday, we opened up a new series we called Esther. Esther, trusting an unseen God. And that really is the underlying story of Esther. Because nowhere in the 10 chapters of her stories recorded in the Old Testament, nowhere in that story is God mentioned. There's not a prophet that's mentioned, prayer's not mentioned, God's name is not spoken, God doesn't speak. And so nowhere do we have God mentioned yet. Obviously, God is orchestrating things from behind the scenes throughout this story. And so we see Esther trusting in an unseen God. And what we find out is that we can still trust God as sovereign, even when we look around at an evil world, even when we have corrupt powers that are leading our world. I mean, even when things don't look good, God's still on the throne. God is still sovereign. That's the message of Esther. That was certainly her story. You look around and she's in the middle of this brokenness and the middle of this mess in her world, and yet God was still at work. It also reminds us that in all of that you and I can feel sometimes displaced, homeless. Esther was a long way from the land of her people, and she was in a place, in a culture that was far from ideal, yet even in spite of that fact, she knew that God still had a plan for her. And you and I can feel homeless. We can feel like we don't fit in this world. We can feel like the world is way different than we are. And when you feel that way, I just want to remind you that God has you right where you are, that God puts us in this world to be able to make a difference. Of course, we'll get into more of that next week as we talk about Esther. It goes right along with one of the values of our church, and that is that every member is a missionary. We believe that every member is a missionary, that God has us in this world, not so we can kind of develop our own kingdoms, not so we can just be good moral people, but God has us where we are so that we can help other people follow His Son Jesus. We're going to get and dig a little deeper into that next week as we talk about Esther in chapters 3 and 4. Look forward to seeing you then.